Godard, the name Godard that's an easy one, came from Jean-Luc Godard, whose films I used to go to see along with Rob Simmons when we first met, really, before the Subway Sect came about. And we generally used to go to see late night films after we'd gone to gigs in London in the sort of mid-70s, which would invariably involve going to see R&B groups doing Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Jimmy Reed songs in sort of back rooms of pubs. And afterwards we'd sort of look out for like something to go and see at about 11:30. There used to be quite a lot of late night cinemas around. And Godard's films were there with Truffaut's and Louis Malle and the Polish films and European films generally. So that's where we got the name from. We all went to this. We didn't actually all go to the same school, but a general group of people did, and Rob Simmons joined us when it became a sixth form college when I got to the age of about 16. And so the rest of the Subway Sect had gone to that school, apart from obviously the first drummer was a local friend of ours, so we all came from the same corner of southwest London except Rob, who was like a couple of miles down the road. Yeah, what happened was we did that thing for Malcolm McLaren at the 100 Club, and that was our first public gig, and he approached us just after that and said, do you want to go on tour as a support band? So like an idiot we said, no, we just jumped at the chance. Because we didn't have anywhere to practice at that time. We were paying out sort of out of our dole money for a practice place which was sort of beyond our means. So his place, it meant we had somewhere free to practice. So obviously we'd have gone along with anything. Although we didn't like mop the place, which was like the first time he went down there, he said, I'm not going to charge you for this place, but he gave us a mop and bucket and said we had to like mop the place out, which we didn't. But apparently that was what he did to all groups that wanted to use it. He said that they had to mop the place out. That was like his standard thing. Like, I'm giving it you free, but you can at least have the courtesy to clean it. But like, we were too young to realise. I mean, now if we went down there, we would mop it out. That's the difference. We're wiser. No, I mean, we weren't really a group. I mean, we were just a name. We were one of those groups that sort of becomes a group before they've thought of what is involved in becoming a group, just by having a T-shirt with that name written on it. And then, like, Malcolm McLaren said to Rob, are you a group? And he just said yes. And then was the panic thing, trying to recruit someone willing to do the bass and the drums was the hardest thing. Because originally we just used to muck about in a youth club, and Paul Packham was like the extrovert of our group, and he did all the singing. But it was a lot of it was impersonating people, like Elvis, and and we couldn't play properly. We'd just make any noise we could along with him. And when it came to getting a drummer, it just so happened that he actually did play the drums in the Boy Scouts. So we bought a drum kit on HP from a shop in Lewisham High Street for 80 quid. Got it in a black cab, took it back to my dad's garden shed in Barnes. When he came home from work, he went out to do his plants. What the hell is that drum kit doing in my shed? And we had no idea who was going to play. We just thought, well, if you're in a group, you need a drum kit. But we had no idea who was going to play it. And it just, the thought of like throwing 80 quid down the drain, he just said, oh, well, I'll have a go, because I did do the snare in the Boy Scouts. And that's how it started. But it was worse than that. The worst bit about it is, and this is God's honest truth, we actually didn't know about the bass drum pedal. We thought that the bass drum was a thing to display the name of the group. So he was just going like that. He wasn't. It was only like when we met the Clash. They said, "Where's your bass drum pedal?" What's that? Yeah, the White Riot tour was the Clash were at the top of the bill, and it was various venues, you know, going from small venues right up to like the one in Edinburgh, which was like that Playhouse Theatre, which is like massive. So on the big gigs, they had like multiple support acts, and we were like relegated right down to not at the bottom of the bill because we had the prefects underneath us sometimes, or the slits, and the little gigs it was just us and the Clash. But the bigger gigs, I think involved the Buzzcocks, the Jam, the Slits, Subway Sect, and the Prefects all on. But the first group went on very early. You know, they went on about 7, and only did about half an hour at the most. So they're all various sorts of gigs. Because we weren't really into any other punk music. You know, even like in London, we weren't into like. We were into the Buzzcocks because we played with them, but we were more into sort of non-punk music, so we didn't go out searching for like stuff that would have been called punky in those days. And we got really fed up with it really quickly, so that's when we started listening to Tamla Motown and soul music and Frank Sinatra and Tony Bennett. And so anything that went on after sort of 78, I wouldn't have known anything about it. I hated punk really after, like, as soon as we learnt our instruments, which took about 2 years, I wanted to do something totally the opposite. That's why luckily we chose Northern Soul, because, I've got all these records from a friend of our bass players who used to go up to Wigan Casino and all that. He lent him about 30 singles, and I started playing this stuff, and I thought, it's not only is it great, but it's not that difficult. It is difficult, but if you're a punk, it sounds like there's like one song where the bass sort of practically did one note throughout about, over 2/3 of the song. So I thought, God, we can do this. And then I started writing songs in the style of what I thought, the Foundations and the Four Tops and all that, and trying to do them in my bedroom with a bloke playing bass with no amplifier, but just leaning it up against the wardrobe. And that was Paul Myers. Another bloke hitting a waste paper basket, Rob Green, and overdubbing sort of high falsetto backing vocals from one cassette player to the other, and trying to make like bedroom Tamla Motown records like that. And from that, we actually did one gig, which was the one we did at the Music Machine in February 1980, where we sort of recruited a Turkish, or Bernie Rhodes recruited a Turkish keyboard player by just going to a Turkish wedding in Camden and saying, "Do you fancy doing a gig, mate?" So, and we got Bob Ward to play the drum kit, because our drummer, he was all right hitting a waste paper basket, but that was about it. And that was the only time we did those songs. But then Bernie Rhodes asked me to write a load of songs for the Black Arabs, who were going out on their first tour supporting Dexys Midnight Runners, but they didn't have any songs, and they were like a local band from Harlesden, and they were really into like white rock music, and they liked things like Steppenwolf, and they used to play all this stuff, and Bernie said, "Look, don't play all that white rock shit, no one's going to listen to you lot playing that." So I was tasked with coming up with like a set of songs to use on tour. So that's when all these Tamla songs that I'd been writing were given to the Black Arabs, and they just chose the ones they liked, and other groups did a couple of the others, like Johnny Britton recorded another one, Happy Go Lucky Girl. Another group called Espresso Bongo did the song Get That Girl, and they're all on this album that we just mixing now. All the stuff that I wrote in response to punk in 1979, when I wanted to do something totally different.
1979?
I don't know, I wasn't listening. It just sort of like, it just turned me off. Anything that would have played punk, I wouldn't have been into anyway. It was just like, became like a sort of status quo for the late 70s, we thought, almost. There was too many groups all doing the same format, we thought, and not just the whole thing was a bit naff. It's pretty obvious that the record companies had taken it over. It looked like and sort of dressed certain people in a punk way and told them what they could go on about. It looked like. But obviously there was stuff out there that I wasn't aware of because I wasn't hunting that. I was hunting like for old Northern Soul obscurities. Well, I was told that Alan and a couple of others came down to London and taped the gig that I was talking about, where we were doing the Northern Soul-y stuff for the first time. And Holiday Hymn was in the set, and they went back and worked it out from there. But I think they'd been to the gigs that we did with the Clash at Glasgow, Apollo or somewhere, or the Edinburgh one. And like a lot of people from the Postcard label, they sort of got off on like the Slits and the Subway Sect more than they seemed to the Clash, and took more ideas of that maybe they could do it themselves from us, rather than the Clash didn't actually make it like anyone could have done it themselves, because they had a bloody backdrop of about 120 foot long. The band couldn't just go out and get an articulated lorry and carry a backdrop around with them, whereas they could just go down Oxfam, get a load of grey jumpers like us and go on stage. No, we, of course, when we played at the Glasgow Apollo, that was pre the band, wasn't it? Because the ban only happened when the Sex Pistols tried to play there, I think, and it was as a result of that, so they wouldn't get any other bands applying to play there. I mean, when we played there, I don't think they had a clue what was going on. The council hadn't heard about punk rock by then, I don't think. Yeah, it was like, the Music Machine was like, the best place in Camden. If you could get 2,000 people, in fact, two of my best gigs ever have been at that venue. One was probably both in 1977 as well. One was Richard Allen the Voidoids, and the other one was Dillinger. And it's just like, if you got it packed, it was just an amazing atmosphere, that place. And we played there quite a few times, but we played there once, and there was hardly anyone there. It was just, we played 2 gigs in a row, I think, in early 78. One in the Nashville in London, which was absolutely packed. And then the next night we played at that Music Machine. There was like about 30 people there, because it was ridiculous trying to do 2 gigs, one after the other. But there was another gig we did there when I think Bernie Rhodes put out a rumour that there was an unknown guest group, and everyone thought it was going to be the Sex Pistols. And that was like, I think we broke the attendance record, and no one in the crowd knew who we were, probably. But I think that was Sham 69's first gig, because they were begging Bernie to let them do a few numbers, and I just remember saying, no, you're not. But then I saw them on stage, so that might have been one of their first gigs, or definitely one of their, first. They probably played locally, maybe in Walton-on-Thames, but I don't know. The song was called Rock and Roll Even. It was a song that we'd done for years, and we thought it was our best song. So we thought that was going to be like our single, basically, but Bernie Rhodes thought that the other side, Ambition, was better. and switched it round. But the other thing, he didn't like the name, Rock and Roll Even. So he just randomly just took a different story out of the lyrics and put that as the title. Just like personal, his taste, he didn't like that name. I don't know why, I never found out why. But he didn't like, I don't know, maybe he was right, but I mean, it's difficult to not like things you've written, but our ambition to us was like not a single. We didn't think it sounded like a single, whereas Rock and Roll Even, we did. But it didn't matter because people just really liked both sides, didn't they? So, it didn't matter what was the A side and what the B side because people liked them both. Trouble, that was done in like mid-80s, with the Blanco y Negro money. Yeah, which involved like a massive cast of jazz musicians from Barnes, from the place the Bull's Head in Barnes used to be like a big jazz venue, and Olympic Studios where it was recorded was just around the corner, so they had links to all the top jazz men, so they assembled a big cast of them for that album. And it was a bit of a disaster. It wasn't a disaster musically, but I wasn't on the case at all. And I don't know, maybe I was just too young at that point to do that style of singing. So it never really came out until years later. Rough Trade put it out without really properly mixing it. I think they gave them like about 6 hours to do the whole album, so it's just like quick rough mixes. So luckily Jeff Travis years later gave me the master tapes, so we came down here with the master tapes in the 90s and mixed it for the first time, and quite a lot of the singing I did again, and by then I was like able to do the singing. There's a lot of jazzy stuff. I think you need to be not old, but you need to have a bit of experience in your voice to do it really well. And I think I was trying to do it, too young the first time round. It was good. I'm glad I did it though, because when we started doing that, it was such a polar opposite to what else was happening. That was at the time when craft work was getting big and all, everything was going electro. So the fact that we did a sort of punk version of sort of jazz songs at that time, I loved doing that. In fact, we're having a get together with that band quite soon to have a bit of a jam session with the group that did Songs for Sale album. Well, that was written at the same time as all these tracks we were recording down here, but I didn't put it on there because Stop That Go, it's just such a classic record that we just can't do it again. It's like that was recorded on a very similar desk to the one down here, funny, done at Chalk Farm Studios when Vic Godard, who Edwyn's had dealings with because they're both into the same sort of equipment, and it's just one of those magic things, Stop That Go, because Bernard Rhodes, you've got to give him credit for putting together the cast list of people that were on. You had the Black Arabs doing all the rhythm section and all that, and you had horns from Dexys, and you had the same Turkish accordion player on there that I was telling you about, who he got from the when he went to the wedding in Camden Town. He was on the accordion, and it was just such a sort of disparate cast of characters. And you had me doing the lead vocals, and it's just one of those strange things where you put all these things together that don't go together, but on that occasion it did. And it's the only time when I first went in there to do the lead vocal, I could hear through the headphones immediately how good it was, like way better than anything I'd ever heard through the headphones. And I think that just brought out the singing, you know, did a really good lead vocals sort of instantaneously. And Bernie Rhodes, he tried to come in to the studio when the lead vocal was just about to start, and it had a great big thick heavy door on a squeaky hinge, and like that hinge was so perfectly in time with the intro when it went. I said, God, that is fantastic. You know, it's like an early sort of sampling type thing. And I said to him, that's the thing about Bernie, you know, he had lots of good ideas, but when he did something like that, he had to be convinced that it was good, you know. I just had to play it to him about 10 times and say, look, you want to start a record, that is how to start a record. You know, you got a big guitar chord, and then you got like the bass going like that, and then you've got you coming in the goal going, and then the rhythm section. I said you couldn't have, you know, if you'd have tried to do that 1,000 times, you'd never get that right, and you've just done it. But they wanted to wipe it, so yeah, I really had to fight hard to get that squeak to be kept on the record. But you know, some things are worth fighting for. But what happened was it was total. It wasn't planned at all. What happened was Johnny Thunders died, set the whole thing off really. I was reading the Independent and I saw like a obituary of Johnny Thunders and I thought, God, he's dead. I can't believe he's dead. So I just started strumming this tune out and I thought, that sounds alright there, I'll tape that. I taped it onto a ghetto blaster. And then I was working in the post office in this place called Keys and Tabs, which is involves handing out van keys to drivers and checking with the little metal tabs that they've collected all the post boxes they're meant to have done, and then ticking them all off and all that sort of thing. One of the drivers was a guy called Paul Baker, knew that I'd done music in the past and said, you know, why don't you, you know, if you want to do some of your songs, I've got a 4-track and you live round the corner, come round any time you like. So that's how that started. We started, yeah, he could play any instrument, so I started going around his house and recording songs. And that Johnny Thunders, I happened to play to, there's another postman at the time, Mark Mills, who was, he sold records at record fairs and he was into like Sex Pistols, Johnny Thunders and all that. So I said, oh Mark, I've written a song about Johnny Thunders, do you want to hear it? And I played it to him and he thought it was really good. And he said, oh, you shouldn't just like have that as a hobby, that should actually come out, that record, Vic. Why don't you send it to someone who's got like a label who put it out? And I said, like who? And he said, Prince. So I thought, oh, you. And then I thought about it. I thought, actually, not Prince, but I do know Jeff Travis. So I sent it to him, and he really liked it. And then he started saying, why don't you do an album? So I started playing him songs of cassettes that I was doing with Paul on his 4-track, and he just said, yeah, we'll do an album. And he said, I think you should have a producer, and that's when he got Edwyn involved. And then we started doing an album for Jeff Travis originally. But that was at the time of all his financial troubles. So I think we did about 4 songs in a studio, and then like we had all these other songs to do, but we didn't have anywhere to do it. So that's when Edwyn said, well, why don't we finish it off on my 8-track, which he had in his bedroom. So that's how we finished it off. And then we had an album, we didn't have a label, so Edwyn was trying to get all different labels. And right at the start, he said to me, look, I'll try loads of labels, but he said, I really don't want to do this, but if the worst comes to the worst and no other label wants to touch it, it'll have to come out on Postcard. And that's what happened. I first met Edwyn because Jeff Travis wanted me to do an album, End of the Surrey People, and he suggested Edwyn as a producer. So I went round Edwyn's house one day, dropped off some cassettes of the songs I'd been working on, and that took it from there. And then he sort of selected an album's worth of songs, and we started recording them. And then I did another album with him, Long-Term Side Effects. Then the next thing I did with him down here was the thing I was talking about, where we got the master tapes from the Trouble album that had been done like about 10 years before that. Brought them down here and mixed them properly, and where necessary did the lead vocals again. And that came out as In Trouble Again. And now we're just working on 1979 now, which is the songs of that gig I was telling you about, where the Alan Hall and I think a couple of the other members came down and taped from February 1980. So it's like quite fitting that we're doing the actual first recording of the album down here. Yeah, I didn't really used to do gigs in those days because, I was really on a late shift at the post office. It would have been very difficult. I started at 2 and I've been in till 10. So I got out of the habit of doing gigs when I started doing all that. I started doing gigs by accident, really, again. When I started doing them again, it was with like various other groups that weren't mine, just singing with them. Either up in Scotland with Douglas and the Leopards, or down here with the Bitter Springs. It was a group formed by another postman who writes songs a few miles down the road from where I'm based. So he had a group, and they used to do like a load of their songs, and then they would learn a load of mine, and we would go on afterwards. And that went on for about 8 or 9 years. So I only got my own group sort of together really in the about 2005, when I went to see Billy Childish playing, and down the road from where I live, and someone was tugging on my back, and there was what turned out to be our next drummer and guitar player, Liam Becker, saying, "Oh, if you want a band, we'll be your band." So I said, "All right." We go to my mate's. My mate had a factory, right in the Bitter Springs, had a factory where the upstairs bit is made into a rehearsal space for various groups. So we went over there for a few hours and just tried to do really simple Velvet Underground numbers, and he was absolutely hopeless. I thought, I said, "No, you're just not good enough." But she was all right on the drums, even though she wasn't hitting the bass drum hard enough. She was really sort of packing a punch on the rest of the kit. So he rung me up that night and said, "Oh, were you all right then?" I said, "Nah, she's all right on the drums, but you're just not good enough on the guitar." So he said, "Well, I'm not really a guitar player. I didn't want to tell you, I'm a bass player." I said, "Well, why the hell didn't you tell?" He said, "Well, you didn't say you wanted a bass player." So anyway, then we had another go with him on bass, and he was actually all right. So I said, "All right, then we'll sort of try and sort a band out." But then I started thinking about it. I thought, well, we've got to do my songs, and they're a bit more difficult than the ones we've been doing. And it so happened there was another postman that I was working with called Trigger, who was in a band as the bass player. And I only found that out by accident, because this is really complicated. I was recording this album, Sands End, in Sands End, which is now what they call Chelsea Riverside, but used to be just like British Gas Works. And my mate had a studio in there called Nick Brown, who was involved in running the studio there. And they did recording there, but they also had a rehearsal room. And we used to, on Sundays, get it for nothing if there was no one using the recording. And that's how we did Sounds End. It took a couple of years going down there every Sunday. And one day there was a knock at the door, and Nick was busy on the computer. I said, "I'll go." I went to the door, and this bloke that I worked with was standing there called Trigger. I said, "What the hell are you doing here?" He said, "Oh, this is where my band are to rehearse." So I watched him on the bass, and I thought, oh, he's all right. And I said, you don't want to join the Subway Sect, do you? And he thought I was joking. I said, no, you're better than the bloke I've got. So I got Trigger in as the bass player, and then I got Lee back onto the guitar and said, look, you know, you're just going to have to learn the guitar, because he wasn't really good enough on the bass either. And yeah, we started from there. Then we got a keyboard player, Sophie, who was a friend of Lee and Becca, and that's how that was my first time when I started doing regular live gigs all the time from about 2005 up until now. But yeah, the lineup since 2005 have been like, there's been loads of them.